I'd like to speak a moment for why I chose this topic. Right? So we have evolved as a mankind, as humanity has evolved, right? And everything needs to evolve over time. So how has PCI DSS evolved over the years, and what's the future? So I've tried to draw an analogy of the human evolution along with the PCI evolution. Right, so if you see here, first we started with understanding the guidelines of the PCI DSS. Right, and you would see that PCI as a council does not come up with day in and day out changes, right? It gives time to the ecosystem to adapt to those changes. Then we came up with identifying the gaps, how to identify gaps as per the guidelines. Then we came up with implementing improvements. Now, since we are here, the next step, which I've tried to portray it like Iron Man, which is the next age, which is the age of AI, is to measure those risks that have been found out so that it goes as a feedback loop into the system that you are using, and it becomes more effective. So what I want to introduce today is an enhanced maturity framework for PCI DSS version 4.0.1 compliance. As a person who has been into hacking very deeply, I do not believe a lot in terms of human interventions. And that's the reason I focus a lot more on data, because the data that's moving inside the organization won't lie to you. Now, the caveat is the data needs to make sense, right? Now, what do I mean by this? By the way, the data needs to make sense. Because a lot of time people say we have a lot of data, but what you actually need is more information. I'll give you an example. There's a movie, it's called Three Idiots. And there is a segment where the actor moves out, right? And the professor asks, where are you going? Because the professor asked him to go out. He was coming back. The professor asked, where are you going? He came and replied, instruments and records, analyze, summarize, organize, debate, and exploit information that have illustrated, not illustrated, paperback, jacketed, non-jacketed, with forward introduction, table of contents, perceived through sensory route of vision, sometimes touched. What does this mean? What he meant was he forgot his books, which he wants to take back. Now, if we have these kind of data, well, it won't make sense. So we need data that is making sense. So how are we going to achieve this particular maturity framework? It's to a 6-step process. Define the scope and collect the data, which is CDE, regional risks. So CD is carded environments, right. Assess maturity across the 12 PCI DSS requirements. Identify and map to tell impacts. Now, what is tell impacts? Technology, economy, legal. These 3 things. Fourth, quantify risk using MC-MC simulations. Now, what is MC-MC? You might have seen a lot of quantification documents or quantification research that has been done. It talks about Monte Carlo simulations, right? All of us might have heard somewhere or the other about Monte Carlo simulations. But the challenge with Monte Carlo simulations is cybersecurity is not a static thing. It's a dynamic moving thing. And Monte Carlo actually fails when the thing becomes dynamic. For that, Markov chain Monte Carlo was introduced. And it gives better results. The 5th is prioritize controls to close those gaps. 6, monitor and reassess dynamically. Now, the 6 steps might be difficult for you to remember, but something that you won't forget is you would see those little kids whom you tell to have dishes made out of potato, and they would say no. But when you give them French fries, They'll be like, yes, I want to have it. So you just remember it by Donna always ignores quality potato menus, and that will give you the 6 steps. Now we'll go a bit deeper into it. So what we have done is we have leveled it across initial, developing, defined, managed, optimized. The reason I've mentioned these levels are because these are very commonly used in the cybersecurity field. You look at the other frameworks like ISO or NIST or any other risk management frameworks, they basically do it with initial, developing, defined, managed, and optimized, ranging from 0 to 100. So 0 to 20, ad hoc, minimal compliance, 21 to 40 is basic, inconsistent controls, 41 to 60 is standardized, documented process, 61 to 80 is proactive monitoring minor gaps, 81 to 100 is fully compliant advanced technology. This particular methodology are being used by many regulators as well at present in many regions, where I have been personally helping them to build this as well. Scoring metrics, right? So the 12 requirements that are there, network, hardware. So I have taken example-wise so that it's easier for us to understand here. So if we take firewall or IDS entry points, right? Total entry points, percentage of coverage. And from 1 to 11, you would see a percentage of coverage. From 12, we have taken an average, because there are 2 parameters that we are taking in point number 12. Hardened systems, percentage covered in total CD systems that you have. Encrypted mask systems, systems storing the data. Secure channels, total channels percentage covered. So if I have, take for example, 10 systems, how much of it is having secure channels? Anti-malware systems, patch systems, which is less than 30 days. MFA users, control locations, monitored systems, tested systems, and the training and policy. Well, scoring weights. Now, how do we arrive on these weights? By studying a lot of data. We work with a lot of universities who have something called the Internet Measurement Society. They measure everything on the internet. So before coming to this on these parameters, I'd like to give you an example, and I'll give you something which you can Google it anytime that you want, and you will get this result. Supposingly, I'm a hacker, which I am, but supposingly I'm still into that phase where I am into hacking groups. Now, take for example, I'm a part of the Lazarus group. Many of you have heard about the Lazarus group, one of the most notorious cyber criminal groups, right? And I decide that I'm going to attack a particular bank next year, about 16 months from now, because cyber attacks are a complete proper planning that goes, it's actually an event that goes into, right? It takes a lot of time. And I decide that I am going to do it by putting a ransomware. Now, what is a ransomware? A ransomware is basically you encrypt the data and ask for money, in simple terms, right? So, and you do not give the key to the organization so that they can decrypt it. How do I decide on what is the ransomware amount I should be asking for? It's not that I get up in the morning and say, I need $10 million because I need to do this world trip, and I'll ask a $10 million ransomware. No, it doesn't happen like that. There's a proper maths behind it. If you Google it, you will get it. It's a research published by University of Twente, Netherlands. So you will get this entire research on how this exact calculation is derived. And it's done by studying a lot of data. So across these 12 requirements, what we have tried to do is we have put a default weight, right? You can see which is 0.10, 0.10, 0.10, 0.08, 0.10, 0.08, 0.04. Now, this is based on normalized studying of data. We have taken 2 specialized scenarios, which is cross-border weight and UPI fraud weight. UPI is Unified Payment Interface. A lot of frauds happen through that as well now. And we have adjusted the weights, right? We've also given an SME weight to that and a rationale of why we are putting that particular weight based on the scenario. In a session just before the tea break, we heard about context, right? And the importance of context when we are looking at different vulnerabilities. Because that exactly translates the vulnerability into a threat. A risk. So let's go deeper into this. A small e-commerce startup in Mumbai processes 20,000 UPI transactions monthly, average value of $20, generating $1 million of revenue with 30 employees. The startup faces frequent UPI fraud, example, phishing attacks, leading to 150 fraud incidents last year, costing them $80,000 in losses and $30,000 in customer reimbursements. Weak encryption, lack of monitoring, vulnerabilities, which is executable vulnerabilities, risking customer trust and regulatory penalties under India's DPDP Act. Now, let's try to find out what was their maturity score before and after they took some steps. So before, you can see the weights have been kept same for before and after. But before, network security controls, they were at level 1. Even after they were at level 1 itself, because they could not do a lot. It's a startup, so it's not being able to do at that scale. Secure system configurations, previously they were at level 0. Right now, they're at level 1. So small improvements can take the maturity to a next level. So if I do that calculation as per the formula, you would see that before the maturity level was at 8 out of 100, which is initial, and that's the reason they were facing a lot of these issues. With implementing few of the controls, it has moved to 28, which is the developing one. Remember, I had mentioned 5 levels of the maturity. Let's look at another example. A Singapore payment processor with 15,000 cross-border transactions monthly faces $200,000 fine risk and $80,000 churn due to inconsistent encryption and authentication. Interventions, TLS 1.3, MFA policies, training, $50,000 total cost. So even if we look here with the initial and before, so I've gone deeper into this with the number of entry points that have been there, how that has been covered, so that you get more details. For example, in fourth, secure data transmission, there were 30 channels before, and out of that, 10 were encrypted. Now, 28 are encrypted, so that moves to 4, level 4. So you can see the before and after maturity score has moved from 20 to 45. Now, to have this, you need to have a view, right? Which is more from an understanding of what are the actions that you need to take, what are the different systems that are at risk, and what are the different controls that is not working for you, what have been the trend of that asset might pop up which you don't know, right? We all have seen that particular risks. Which is your most matured control. So a view like this can be helpful. This is something that I've tried to portray so that you can get your PCI score, your maturity level, your most matured control, least matured control, network security controls, restricted data, or any other control that might be there, and each of the controls at what level they are, and over months, how they have been moving. Now, you can create your own view. This was just a mock-up that I wanted to present so that you get an understanding of what are the different aspects that you can put while portraying or having a view for your PCI maturity. That would be all from my end. Thank you, everyone, for your patient hearing. You can scan this QR and connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to go deeper. If you have any questions, more than happy to clarify. Thank you, everyone.